everyone and welcome back. So today we're talking about Mare of Easttown, a limited series on HBO. And the premise being we follow a detective, Mare, in this Philadelphia town, Easttown, as she tries to get her life together while at the same time trying to solve a murder mystery and a missing persons case. It stars notably Kate Winslet and Guy Pearce, who at the end I was like, oh, I like Memento. Like, he just kind of surprised me at the end. And so it was a pleasant surprise. Kate Winslet actually did do a miniseries before on HBO, and it was really bad. It wasn't very good. She was good in it, but I think it was called Mildred Pierce. I believe it's still on there. But she has done two of my favorite movies. One is Little Children, and the other is Revolutionary Road, and especially Little Children. So if you have time, go watch that movie. I promise you, it'll just have you like mind for a few weeks. Anyway, so I was happy to see her again. And I'm not gonna lie, as a pilot episode, it was very slow. Like, I'm sure there were important clues, but I was just too tired to, it's one we'll come back to. So I would just watch it as a formality, give it a second episode, and I'm sure it'll pick up since it's a limited series and it has to pick up. And so we're introduced to Easttown. It seems like this very dead place. There's no economy here. It just, you get all these shots of old buildings and cemeteries, and you just get the sense it's a place you go to disappear, or you become a missing person. You're not really meant to be found again. It's like the end of the line. You just get that sense you're at the end of the world. There's just nothing here. And so this episode does two things. We're introduced to Mare and the murder victim, Erin, who's this very sweet woman. And I'm glad that the victim was finally likable and wholesome, it does make it more sad a bit, because you're like, oh, I anybody but her, So let's start with Mare. I'm not gonna lie, Mare is a bit much. When I first saw her, I'm like, that's what we're doing. She had the jacket on, she was eating a burger in the car. She was going full on, and good for her. And so she's kind of rough, she's a divorcee, she's got kids, she's a grandma. And as a police officer, it seems like she's kind of big boss. People kind of call her just to talk about things, to kind of touch base with her. She's like a therapist. She's not really that mean cop. If she arrests you, she gives you a second chance. It's kind of cartoonish at times. You're like, okay. And thankfully, she's a good enough actress that you're like, I can maybe see this. And yeah, that seems to be her function. This is a very small-knit community. Everybody seems to know each other. Everybody seems to know everything about each other. And she is staple. She seems to have grown up there. She has a good reputation. And she seems to be also kind of in a weird midlife crisis. As a police officer, she seems decent, to be honest. We're kind of introduced to her as a cop through this cold case. So it seems like one of the mothers in the community, her daughter had gone missing. And a lot of time and resources had been spent on trying to find this her missing daughter. And so we're kind of introduced to this missing persons case, which initially I thought would be the focus. We're like, okay, we're gonna focus on what happened to this girl. And then at the end, it kind of takes another turn. So again, there's this missing person. One of the daughters kind of in the community went missing, and a lot of resources and time was spent trying to find her, but nobody knows where she went. They don't know if she's dead. They don't know if she's alive. Apparently she has a history of drug use. It's all in the background, which is really appropriate because it seems like this is a town that has a lot of badly buried dead bodies. So how that's gonna converge with the other storyline, I don't know. But who knows? Maybe it's the same killer, but that you get a sense okay, they're setting up, and it did a good job of that. And that's Mare. So that's kind of a brief overview of Mare. And then we go to the victim. And the victim, Erin, is the most wholesome. It starts off so optimistic. So we're following these two characters around. And we don't really, just as kind of background information, just to kind of tell us who it is that's going to be our main focus. And so the first is Mare of Easttown. And then the second is Erin. So Erin is introduced to us as this loving mother. She's talking to her baby, and that's how we see her, and we're like, wow, this is so wholesome, and this is so nice. And then it just all goes downhill from there. Everybody around this poor girl is toxic and, probably deserves to go to jail. So Erin is a very young girl. she had a baby with her boyfriend, but they're broken up. And we're kind of introduced to her boyfriend and her father. It seems like she lives with her father and she shares custody of the baby with her boyfriend. And so she has a bad relationship with both of them. They both seem very toxic and abusive. So let's start with the boyfriend. So we go from this really nice moment of her with her baby to this boyfriend knocking on the door. And this guy, like, is the definition of a deadbeat father. So he comes to pick up his baby, and it seems like poor Erin doesn't really have a good relationship, again, with anybody. So her boyfriend has a girlfriend, and right off the bat, again, the storyline, it tries to kind of trap you in all these cliches. And of course, there's like new girl versus old girl. And right off the bat, like shortly after we meet Erin, her boyfriend comes to pick up the baby, and of course his new girlfriend is in the car saying, please stop texting my man, you're gonna get what's yours. All this stuff, like basically threatening her. And when Erin actually shows up dead, you're like, okay, clearly it was this woman. But that's probably not the case, but that's just to kind of give you an overview of how isolated and alone she really is. And then you get to her father, who just seems like very unimpressed with everything that she's doing. And it doesn't seem like Erin has a lot of people to talk to. And so this whole, like, the only kind of light that she has in her life is this guy that she'd been texting through this app. So this whole episode, like, she's kind of taking all this crap, but the only thing that she has to look forward to is this date with this mystery person that she met on an app. And so the whole episode, she's just trying to keep calm and happy and optimistic. And she's kind of like a weird, like, she's like a bubbly person. And so she goes over to her friend's house. So, you know, she has one friend at least, so that was good. And so watching her, we're just kind of watching her, like, her day-to-day, and like what was supposed to kind of make up for everything goes horribly wrong. So everything is kind of building up to this moment. So there's kind of two interesting things that happen at the end before we get to the big big ending. The first is with Mare. So again, just starting with Mare, like her whole day we're watching and we're like, where's this going? And the most interesting part of her day was at the end. So this whole day is not just a day in the life, but apparently it was supposed to be a very special day for her. It marked her 25th anniversary of her basketball team since she was in high school or something like this. And she was celebrating, and she was trying to feel better about herself because her ex-husband is getting remarried and he has a new wife and everybody seems to like them better than her. And so she's at this bar trying to drink away her sorrows, and out of nowhere, we're introduced to Guy Pearce. And Guy Pearce, I guess, is a writer from Syracuse. He's teaching at the local university. And everything about him seems like, you know, very shady. It's like, you came to this town to teach creative writing? Like, either you did this on purpose because you're investigating something, or you're hiding something yourself. Because as I said, this is the type of town that's kind of like a dead end. It's like where you go when you have no other options. So you're not really sure like why he's really there, why he took this job. You get the sense that he had no other choice but to take this job. And so she kind of meets him, and they kind of hit it off right away. And that's the most interesting part of Mare's storyline. So while all this is happening, we're following Erin. So Erin just got off her date. She was catfished. The last thing we see is her stumbling into the woods. And of course, shortly thereafter, we find out that she died. And that's how the episode ends. And so what do I think? I think it was a good pilot episode. I think there's a lot of interesting questions. There's a lot about Mare that we don't really know, like why is she limping? Why is she a grandma? Like she kind of has a vision of this man sitting in the corner while she's hugging her grandson. So we have to assume that, you know, she had a son and maybe he overdosed or something, because again, this town it seems to have a serious drug problem. There seems to be a lot of seedy things going on beneath the surface. And Mare seems very invested in the well-being of the people in the town. So you get the sense that she has some type of personal stake here. So we'll see how that kind of unravels. Erin, poor Erin, that had to be like the worst day in the life of. And, you know, I want to say it was the raggedy new girlfriend who did it, but I don't think it was. So, and that's it. So I think this whole series will be trying to figure out, like, basically what happened to this missing girl and who murdered you know, this poor young mother. So overall, I enjoyed it. It's a bit slow, so just kind of bear with it. And hopefully, you know, things kick off next week and they kick off in a way that makes sense. So I hope it doesn't just accelerate like The Undoing, where it just kind of goes somewhere and you're like, I can't watch, like this is just getting ridiculous. So we'll see. Until next time.